In part 1, using a slideshow, I walked you through setting up XACARS for use with Delta Virtual, as well as the quirks associated with the plugin. In this part, I will take you on a live flight from Boston to Newark to show you XACARS in action. I will also demonstrate a workaround to load your flight into XACARS. So here we have X-Plane running. We've got a Boeing 737-800 loaded and operating. This particular aircraft is a freeware aircraft that comes from the folks at EADT. It's a fully functional 737-800 aircraft. It's a freeware aircraft by donation. It only comes in a 2D model, but it is fully developed. Highly recommend it. I'll also post the URL for the various aircraft that I'm showing in this video in the YouTube video description. I'm not that familiar with the 737. I only chose this aircraft because I wanted to show you the workaround for loading the flight plan or the flight route into XACARS. I'm not actually going to fly this aircraft. I'm going to switch over to the Flight Factor Boeing 757-200 for the actual flight to Newark. So as I started this program, it already loaded a couple of plugins that pop up automatically. As we all know, not all plugins play nicely. I've got a number of plugins, and through various tweaks and loading and reloading, I've got them all to work together. But if you do come across a troublesome plugin, there is one feature that probably most of us don't or may have not discovered, is this plugin admin. Instead of having to load and unload plugins, all you have to do is disable. So right now I've got this persistent plugin that shows up. It's the Iveo clients. I'm not going to be flying on Iveo. I'm going to be flying on VATSIM. So I can't have the Iveo client and XSquawk running at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and disable the Iveo plugin just by clicking on the button there, and it disappears. This next plugin is the XFMC plugin that provides a fully functional flight management computer that provides both LNAV and RNAV capability, even if your aircraft does not have that flight management capability built into it. I need this particular plugin to work with my Flight Factor Boeing 757, so there is a hotkey to hide it. I'm just going to press the F9 button and it is out of view. So there we have our cockpit for the Boeing 737. If you notice, the engines are running. I did that to demonstrate what will happen if we try to start XACARS with engines running, and what we need to do to properly configure XACARS to work. Now this is what I call the hot and go method. So the plane is already hot, everything is running. All we need to do is just file our flight plan and off we go. So let's go ahead and open up XACARS. And there our information, there we have the blank form. Now I want to enter in the flight information that comes from the database at DVA. So let's go ahead and I'm going to resize our windows here. And here we are at the Delta Virtual Airlines flight schedule search. I'm going to search for all flights, because I personally know that the flight from Boston to Newark is a historical flight, so I'm just going to set that to all. So we're going to go from Boston to Newark, click on search, and there's the flight I want to use, the Delta Virtual Historic Flight to Flight 267. So I'm going to use that. Let's go back to X-Plane, DVH267. I click the flight data via ACARS, and departure Boston, destination Newark was populated, route data was not populated, passenger 0, I'm the pilot, so I'm going to put down 1. Aircraft was populated as a Boeing 727-200, and it was marked as VFR. This is going to be an IFR flight. Now the option, if you're going to be flying online, automatically is selected offline. If you're going to fly on VATSIM, you select the VATSIM button. If you're going to fly on IVAO, select the other and type in IVAO. I'm not going to fly on IVAO, so I'm going to fly on VATSIM, so I'm going to choose the VATSIM button. Now, what about that workaround? How do I get that data automatically in there? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the routes. So I'm going to my favorite flight dispatching program, SimBrief, and I've already entered in the information here, DVA or DVH 267 from Boston to Newark. I'm going to have it automatically select. Why are you not working? Oh, I had previously generated this flight. And my airframe is going to be a Boeing 757. And as soon as I entered that information, it automatically populated the route for me. It's going to be the PATS 3 departure, PATS, Nelly, Flossie 3 arrival. I'm going to go ahead and analyze that route, and it is valid against the current ARAC of 1503. I'll generate my flight plan. And now I know my flight is going to be PATS 3, PATS, Nelly, Flossie 3. So, again, I'm going to take out the direct because that doesn't want to let me take that out. So if I right-click and copy, as I pointed out in the previous video, if I come to the plugin, right-click, no pop-up menu. Position the cursor. I see a flashing cursor there, so I'm going to hit Control-V, nothing. So this is, again, one of those most annoying quirks of this plugin. So I know my route is, I'm going to do it in all caps, PA, PATS 3, PATS, Nelly, Flossie 3 arrival. But what if you've got a long transatlantic flight or a long cross-country flight and you have multiple waypoints? Typing all those in can be annoying. There is another option here, flight data from FMS. We're all familiar with the stock FMS that comes with X-Plane, this little beast right here, which comes with its own annoying quirks. But if we go back to our dispatch program, we can download an FMS in the X-Plane format. So I'm going to go ahead and select X-Plane as my format, download the FMS. I'm going to place it in the appropriate X-Plane folder, X-Plane, Outputs, FMS Plans, Save. And now I know my flight plan is KBOS KEWR 01.FMS. So if I go to the flight management system on my aircraft and click Load, there's the flight plan I already saved, open FMS, and if I look in the window here, I can step through and see all my waypoints that are supposed to be there. So let's go back to XACARS, and I'm going to again click Flight Data from ACARS. And as you can see, all the fields were again populated. They come directly from the ACARS database, but again, the route is not there. Now, if I click Flight Data from FMS, there are all my points. Also included were waypoints along the routes that were not in the flight plan before, but these are all valid waypoints. Another thing that has done here, it has put a question mark in the alternate field I'm going to go ahead and select Baltimore Airport as my alternates. Again, I need to select IFR, passengers 1. But now, since the data has come from the FMS, my aircraft type is not located here. Again, I have to use the formats from the DVA database. So I go back to the DVA database. The format of the aircraft type has to be in this format, B727-200. But I'm not flying a 727. I'm going to be flying a 757. So 757-200. It's got a B in there, so I'll remove that. I'm not going to be carrying any cargo. My altitude. Now, as a VATSIM controller, there's one thing that annoys me. When people file flight plans and they fill in their altitude, they put down FL. That's your flight level, not your altitude. Altitude is your full altitude, 18,000 feet. I'm flying on VATSIM, and I'm going to click Start ACARS. And there's that error message. You are already in the air or have at least one engine running. XACARS tracking continues, can only be on the ground while all engines are shut down. So I click OK. And I'm going to shut down my engines. So I'm going to hit the fuel cutoff switches, and I see my engine spooling down now. Now you need to wait till all your compressors are fully idle. XACARS will then, because XACARS will still interpret that as that the engines are running. Low pressure, low pressure. We can go ahead and click Start ACARS. XACARS tracking starts now. XACARS is now running. Invalid equipment type. What's going on here? Again, lowercase b. We have to stop ACARS because ACARS is still running. Our data is being logged. ACARS is running, but our data is not being logged. So if we try to submit the PIREP, at the end of this flight, it will not be accepted. So we have to stop ACARS. ACARS is already tracking your flight. Do you wish to stop? Yes. So it was a lowercase b and an uppercase b. So that was an invalid code. So it's B757-200 Start ACARS. Now, the XACARS program is finally happy. I can now hide the plugin, and I can go through my startup procedures and continue my flight while it logs the information. Now, I'm not going to be flying this aircraft. To be quite honest, now that I've shut the engines down, I don't know how to start them up again in this particular aircraft. So I'm going to be moving to over to my preferred aircraft, which is the Flight Factor Boeing 757-200, and we will continue from there. Alright, here I am cold and dark inside my Boeing 757. I'm going to go ahead and start my XACARS program and get that configured. I've already stepped through half of my pre-flight checklist. My next item on my checklist is to configure XACARS. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the plugin. DVH 267 flight data from ACARS. Here we go. Boston to Newark. Alternates is going to be Baltimore. Now, this particular aircraft does not use the stock FMS system from X-Plane. It uses its own FMS. This is where the workaround does not work, because I cannot load my flight plan into my flight system, my flight management system on this aircraft, and then it'll populate this. So this is where the frustration factor comes in. But I've flown this route many a times, and I know the route by heart. Pats 3, Pats, Nelly, Flossie 3 arrival. One passenger, IFR aircraft, Boeing 757-200, altitude, not flight level, altitude 18000, 18,000, VATSIM, everything looks good. I'm going to click starts, and no error message. I can now go ahead and hide this. I'm going to continue my checklist, and I'll get back to you once we're level off at 18,000 and see what's happening on the Delta Virtual website. So here we are, level at flight level 180. Just departed Boston on our way to Newark. Beautiful sunset, flying my flight factor Boeing 757. And the graphics are pretty awesome. Nice blue skies out there. Look at that. There's Boston in the background. And we're well on our way. Go back to the cockpit. So let's take a look what's happening with XACARS. XACARS is running. It doesn't show anything in our plugin. Just continue to hide this. Let's take a look at the Delta VA website. Now, there are a number of different maps. We want to make sure that we are on the right one. This is the online map showing VATSIM. And if I was to zoom in on my area where I'm flying, it's not me. It's not me. I'm not on here. Let's take a look again. There I am. Now this is the information that's coming from VATSIM. There is my call sign, Delta 2152 from Boston to Newark, currently at 18,000 feet, speed of 110, and my VATSIM ID. Now this is the VATSIM website. We need to look at what's happening on the XACARS, live XACARS map. So if we look over here on our Delta VA website, live XACARS map, we will then see all the flights that are being logged on XACARS. That's not me. That's not me. And that's not me. Here is another quirk of XACARS. Our flight, as it's being logged, is not displayed on the DVA websites. So, again, this is one of those crapshoots that is my information being uploaded and is it being saved in my PIREP? We will only know that when we land and actually submit our PIREP at the end of the flight. So I will continue this flight and I'll check back in with you once we're parked at the gate. Well, welcome to Newark. We just landed. About to cross runway 4 left and park at the gate. We'll shut down the engines and see what XACARS has for us. Now I have to admit, if you notice, the weather looks pretty bleak. But when we were departing Boston, it was a bright sunny evening. Well, it's because I started getting low frame rates, and sure enough, my program crashed. So I had to restart the program, and I flew on another day, and the weather, of course, changed. And I think I discovered what the problem is for some reason XSquawk is still causing some problems, and was killing my frame rates almost down to 4 frames a second, and my computer just crashed at that point. So a little bit more research and configuring the plugins to see why they're not cooperating. So we'll park right over here. Find the center line. A little bit of wrong angle. Nice about the nose wheel tiller. Set our parking brake. Parking brake set. Engine shut down. Alright, now the moment of truth. Go to our plugins, XACARS, open XACARS, and since we've landed, it's gone to a stop mode, so we will view our PyRep. Everything looks good, and now we'll go ahead and send. PyRep successfully sent. Now here's another interesting quirk. It doesn't affect our operation, but when we click yes, it automatically opens up a save dialog box. I see no purpose in saving PyReps because you can only submit them at the end of a flight. So I go ahead and cancel. And it says cannot access file, so I just go ahead and click OK. I click exit, click hide, and yes. Now let's take a look at the DVA website and see what we have. Go ahead to my logbook, and there is my successfully logged flight. We see it was it's logged flight, was flown online with VATSIM, and that it counts for promotion in the Boeing 757-200 program. That's the program I'm currently enrolled in. But let's actually take a look at the flight data, the individual information. So here's the information. XACARS client we see right here is XACARS. Takeoff information, landing information, and the route of flight. Now this route of flight we see here, let me zoom out a little bit, is our plotted routes, or the route that we put in the database or in the route field of ACARS. But if we actually put in, click these other flights, not a lot of information appears there. Well, let's take a look at what was actually sent by downloading the actual raw data. So we can download that using the download data into Microsoft Excel. It's actually a comma separated values file, and we'll compare that to a DVA ACARS, and we'll see the difference between the two clients. Okay, so this ACARS flight is the flight I just finished using XACARS. Let's go back to my logbook, look at a previous flight. Here was the online event down to Cancun, Mexico. I flew that using our DVA 757-200 using FSX. I'm going to download that raw data. Again, these are CVS files. I'll save that. Go to my desktop. So here we have our two CSV files. Let's open up the first one. This is for our XACARS loaded data, or sent data, and as we can see, not a whole lot of information. We've got date and time, latitude and longitude, altitude, heading, airspeed, ground speed, Mach, wind speed, wind heading, fuel, and I'm not sure what this last column is. Looks like altitude, but I was flying at flight level 180, so but as we can see, again, there's not a whole lot of information there. Let's compare that to what our DVA ACARS program sends. And we can see a whole lot of more information. I'm not going to name that all out, but here we can always start again in the first column, date and time, latitude and longitude, and all the way over to the right we can see the frequencies for our nav radios, our COM frequencies, and if ATC was online. So this is why we have to use the DVA ACARS clients when we're doing our check rides, because of all this other pertinent information that is recorded. So until the time that we have a client for X-Plane or plug-in for X-Plane that records all this similar information, we won't be able to use the X-Plane platform to do our check rides. But we can still fly X-Plane to log normal flights. So I hope this was informative, and hope alleviates some of your frustrations on why things work and don't work. Please leave any comments, and have a good flight.